So good evening, everybody. My name is Roseanne Hassett. I'm the Executive Director of the American Civil Defense Association. I'd like to welcome you to our Civil Defense meeting tonight. Tonight we have Kylene and Jonathan Jones with us of the Provident Prepper. They have also been past board members of TACDA and are current TACDA advisors. And they are going to be discussing lessons learned from the recent Texas power crisis. So you're welcome to ask questions. You can raise your hand or just speak up if you want to, if we don't catch the hand. You can also type in the chat field and we'll try to get all of the questions answered. So I will turn the time over to Jonathan and Kylene.
Okay, thanks, Roseanne. Thank you all for being here. Everybody can hear?
Yeah.
Any problems? Okay. All right, we will move ahead. I'm sure you're all aware of the storm that hit Texas. Maybe some of you are in Texas, I don't know. But we have interacted with a bunch of people in Texas and they had quite the ride and there were lots of lessons to be learned. So we're going to jump into a few of these. You want to talk about our friends here?
Okay, so this was just really darling. This family contacted me, or us, and offered to share some of the things that they had learned. And that's what actually prompted this video, was we took not only the lessons of this family, but the lessons that were learned by so many of our viewers. So we have a website, it's theprovidentprepper.org, as well as the YouTube channel, The Provident Prepper. And we really work to help families and people become more prepared in realistic ways, to become more self-reliant. And one of our videos just went crazy. It was about preparing for a winter power outage. And so many comments from people that were really struggling in Texas and surrounding areas. The polar vortex wasn't limited to just Texas. It was felt in many, many areas. So this is kind of cool. So in this presentation, we're gonna talk about some of the things that these people learned. Now, just for a background, Texas tends to be really warm and they are not prepared for very, very cold temperatures. They're not prepared with things even like warm winter coats. They had no snowmobiles or ability to clear the roads. It was just crazy for these people. It was a really good wake up.
Yeah.
Oops. It doesn't want to do it on its own. Okay, so go ahead.
Oh, we'll just jump into lesson one, and that is the need for all of us to prepare for the unexpected. Now, sometimes we go about our risk assessment and we look at the things that normally might happen, but we need to look at some things that might happen, that could happen. For us in a colder climate, we could experience a heat wave that would do the same kind of thing that happened in Texas. A heat wave would probably have the potential of taking down the power grid because everybody would be using their air conditioning extensively, refrigeration would go up, all these things. We could have the same kind of situation in our area if we had that kind of a reverse situation.
So we just need to be prepared for the unexpected. And granted, we want the majority of our resources to go toward things when we do our risk evaluation that we would anticipate. So for us, the chance of a winter power outage is significant. So we really need to prepare for that. But there are other things that, I mean, there's not a volcano near us, so we wouldn't be preparing as much for a volcanic eruption.
Correct.
That makes sense. So some of the comments that these are my boys. So they don't understand the fact that it is winter here where we live in Utah. That is how they go out to take care of the animals. I don't know. I think they need some help. But anyway, so some of our viewers, like one of them said, gave the advice that we should stay humble and prepare for anything. I thought the stay humble was kind of an interesting comment. Carrie Knight said, you sure ended up being right about that. People in parts of Texas where they don't even own warm coats are freezing right now. So the second lesson is that knowledge is power. And it's more about what you know than what you have. The resources are super important. However, you're not always going to have those resources. So Journey of Love and Light said, I bet the ones who heard this good warning, and they're talking about our video that came out like 3 months before this power outage occurred, and took action, are very grateful to you and your family right now. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Safe travels all, wishing you warmth and electricity, LOL.
So knowledge does make the difference. And that's one of the critical keys.
Oh, would you go back first?
Absolutely.
Sorry. When we talk about knowledge, I think one of the things that we need to make sure we point out is in our video, we talked about setting up microclimates. So if your power goes out, you can set up a tent or make some type of a cardboard living arrangement or throw blankets over the kitchen table so that you have this micro environment and it keeps you so much warmer. And it's funny because people didn't believe that. And then we had all these comments come afterwards about what a significant difference setting up a tent in your living room made in their ability to stay warm. So absolutely. I missed that on that one.
And of course, advanced preparation makes all the difference. We were dealing with a situation in Texas where they had not made advanced preparations. They didn't even think this could happen, a lot of these people, or if they knew that, I mean, it has happened before, but it's been so long ago that memories are short. And so having these things in place, thinking about these things and having preparations in place makes all the difference. That's why we encourage people to do it now. Get started now. And you can't accomplish everything all at once, but take progressive steps and just make progress towards being ready for whatever may happen.
Yeah, this photo here is one of our children when we did a self-inflicted power outage because we thought we cannot teach people this if we don't know what we're talking about. So we turned off our power just to see if we could survive it. Since that time, that was a long time ago, but since that time, we've also gone without going to the grocery store for 90 days, just living off of what we could produce at home or our food storage. And the other thing that we did was a grid down cooking challenge. So for 30 days, we didn't use any electricity or natural gas to cook any of our food.
Including Thanksgiving dinner. Yeah. And it was a challenge and we learned a lot, but it can be done if we have the tools and the knowledge to make it happen.
That's right. And John, on this little comment here, John said his daughter called when it hit the Oklahoma Panhandle and said, Dad, it's very, very bad. Get your plan going right now. And I did. And we were fine. And I think that says a lot about prepping, is that we have a plan, we have systems in place, and because we do, we're able to just weather anything. I mean, there's still going to be challenges and there may be inconveniences, absolutely. We may be uncomfortable, but that plan and that preparedness makes all the difference.
So think about things like safe power outage lighting. We have a series of solar powered lamps and lanterns that we just keep in the window all the time.
Yeah, actually, I think they can see some of them.
Yeah.
So hybrid lights, one of my favorite. And these are just kept charging in the window. And they are some, can you see this? I mean, just some incredible bright lights. And they are always ready. Whoops, I didn't turn them all off. Because they're kept in the windows charging, kind of out of the way where the grandkids can't get to them, but where they're renewable, right? That's so right. We always have them
ready to go when we need them. Think about things like power outage heating. How will you keep your house warm? A lot of people were cold in Texas.
Yeah,
and they didn't really have the ways.
Being cold.
Yeah, they didn't have the ways to take care of that. So if we take steps right now, regardless of where you live and which kind of thing you're preparing for, take the steps so that you can take care of that when you need to.
Now, one really good set of advice that it's funny that they would say this because we're the ones always harping on this, but have a fire extinguisher at hand when using anything with a flame. And then also the carbon monoxide detector. We are a big fan of these. I call them kitty, but I guess they're not.
Whatever they're called.
Anyway, but it's a digital readout. And so if you have levels of carbon monoxide that aren't high enough to alarm, it's going to let you know. And that's really good because carbon monoxide can build up at low levels and actually make you sick before your real carbon monoxide detector, or not your real one, but like the one that's in your ceiling, will ever go off. The fire extinguisher on the right is actually in my kitchen because I'm a little bit accident prone. And so we have a few of these throughout our house, just in these boxes set in the wall, because we want to make sure that we're safe and ready. Part of our prepping.
Absolutely.
Your first line of protection seriously is your clothing. And one of our viewers talked about wearing a ski cap or two, a pair or two of gloves or mittens, long johns, double t-shirts, under pullover hoodie, double socks and double jeans, march, and sleep with your clothes on. They're seriously, you want to dress in layers, but think about the clothing that you have, because that is one of your first lines of defense.
Absolutely.
And then this is about the tent. This was 4 of our little kids inside the tent when we were doing this experiment. And for those of you who haven't heard this experiment that we did, so we turned off the power for this 4 days, right? And I had all this book knowledge. And one of the things that we had learned was about in the 1964 Alaskan earthquake, my friend's parents actually survived that because they were able to set up a tent in their living room or in their family room, and they all kind of lived in there because their fireplace had been compromised, so they had no heat, and this is Alaska. And so we put 2 of the kids in one little Walmart pup tent, right? It was a $15 clearance tent, and the other 2, the boys, in another one. And then John and I went to bed in our bed, piled with blankets, because I wouldn't sleep anywhere but on my bed. And then in the middle of the night, I just sat up and I was terrified that I killed my children with this stupid experience and that they had frozen to death. And so I went running out there and I unzipped the tent, and this whoosh of hot air hit me in the face. And the kids were laying on top of sleeping bags going, they were so hot. But it was a really good lesson that this works. And that's what a lot of the people in Texas found out, was that it works.
Right. So make sure you have the things. If you don't have a tent, make sure you have some blankets that you can put over a bunk bed or whatever it is. You can create that little micro environment that can make all the difference.
One of them even talked about setting up a cardboard box like the homeless people and doing that inside of their family room and how much that helped. So, all right, another one was sleeping bags are really good at night, right? And pet warmers, right?
Absolutely. And pets can be warmers.
Pet warmers.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes when you're in really desperate situations, you need to get creative. I am a huge fan of tea lights. This is a little tea light heater, and it only has 7 little tea lights in it, and it's inside of a can. And we store it like this. It has a lot more tea lights in it. It has matches and things like that. But it doesn't warm the whole room. But when you have nothing else, it definitely can make a difference. We have a video, emergency fuel candles, that talks about how you can use candles like tea lights as emergency fuel. And you might want to check that out because candles are really safe to store. Would I rather have my wood burning stove? Absolutely. Yeah, hands down. But you know, everybody's not in a situation where they can have one. So this is a good option.
Right.
Also, safe heat is one of my very, very favorite fuels to store, because those little cans of safe heat, not all sterno is like this, but safe heat was intended to be burned indoors by caterers. These cans last about 6 hours, and you can use them either as emergency cooking or by using the terracotta pot system, where you have the little terracotta pot, you block the hole with something that's not going to burn, like aluminum foil, and then you put a larger pot on top, and you cannot see it because it's covered up at the bottom. But that temperature that's of the air coming out of there is 429 degrees. So it's hot. No, it's not going to heat your whole room. But man, when you're really cold, having a nice source of heat, it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Kylene,
And these are two
this
of
is
our
David.
Hi, David.
I raised my hand. See,
Sorry,
I did.
I see
That's
your hand now. I
that's
wasn't
okay.
looking over there.
Could you go back to the previous slide?
Yes.
That one?
The safe heat, is that the ones that have almost like a wick like at the top under the cap?
Yes.
It's a wick, but it's really thick.
Yeah,
And it's,
that's why I said a wick like
yeah, it's
thing
kind of
under
wicky
the cap.
like.
Okay,
Yeah.
just for clarity, thank you.
Yeah.
And actually, Safe Heat, you can buy it on Amazon. But if you know anybody who has an Sam's Club
yeah.
card, Sam's Club sells it in their catering section, and it's super inexpensive. And it comes in these little cases that stack, and it's really nice.
And we had I picked up a case for the SPO. Up until the end of the world last year, we would have a New Year's breakfast on the first day of the fiscal year. So I made sure that we had the chafing tables and everything just for safety. So yeah, we had cases of the stuff.
Yeah, it's
right.
good stuff. It's really
Yeah.
good stuff.
Very handy and easy to store. These are a couple of our favorites, the buddy heaters, and they come in 2 or 3 or 4 different sizes. But these are very handy. These are rated for indoor use as long as you live below 7,000 feet in elevation. These have oxygen sensors that will turn them off if there's a problem. They are very safe and they're very handy. They can be taken with you. We can take them in the bathroom when we shower just to provide a little heat. I highly recommend these.
They're really good.
Yeah, absolutely a good tool. Just make sure that you know how to use them safely.
Sheila said, without power for 9 days in Oregon, I learned the warmers really work. I put them all over my body. My 3 little dogs helped. I'm buying a wood stove. It serves a lot of purposes. Keep your feet dry always. Keep your head covered. I went to the dollar store and bought a bunch. I'm alone, so I'm moving around a lot to stay warm. Good video, great tips. Candles help heat the place too. Everything was sold out within hours. It's kind of interesting to hear some of the stuff that they say, that these people who weren't prepared. And then, she talks about how she's getting a wood burning stove. Hands down, if you can, if it's realistic for you to get a wood burning stove, I would do it. We actually are looking into getting a masonry stove. Is it a masonry stove?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Where it has the fireplace down at the bottom and then it has the oven up on top to cook. And I'm a little bit excited about that because I don't like to be cold.
Absolutely
I don't
not.
like to be cold.
But this one on the left is Mama's favorite tool, and we can both heat the house and cook with that. Now, obviously, you're not going to use that in the summertime, but in the wintertime, this is such a great tool, and the fuel is fairly readily available in most places. And we just go down to our green waste, and they have piles of logs that would otherwise just get burned, so we bring them. And it's just such a great tool. It does such a great job. So, and I know that in some places they're not allowed, or they're very limited because of concerns over pollution, but if you can, this is a great way to go.
And the one on the right, that wood burning stove actually belongs to a friend of mine. And that is what she heats her home exclusively with. David has a question.
The stove on the left, is that a hot water tank on the top section?
Yes.
Not on the top. The top is a warmer, but on the right-hand side, that is a water jacket, and it has a little spigot at the bottom so that it's copper lined and you put water in it. And so you've got hot water all the time.
Okay. That's what I thought I was seeing.
It's really nice. I really like it.
So let's not forget about water either. There were people who were struggling because of broken lines, problems that way, not having enough drinking water. We encourage everyone to have at least a 2-week supply of water, and that includes 2 gallons per person per day for at least 2 weeks. So, and I'm not a huge fan of water bottles. I really don't care for them much, but they are such a great tool for having a couple or 2 or 3 cases on hand, something you can throw in the car in a hurry, or just have something that's ready to go.
And if you want to learn more about storing water for an emergency, we have that YouTube video on emergency water storage that really has a lot of good ideas in it. One of the things that they were doing in Texas was getting really creative. And they were trying to do things like catch the melting snow off of the roof. And they would use anything that they had. I thought that was really interesting how very creative they were getting just to be able to meet their basic needs. Right. And one of the people mentioned something like, oh, a 10-gallon tub of snow melts into just a little over a gallon of water. So it's interesting to see, you know, and different snows have different water content. Yeah. But I think it's really interesting to think, you know, we can't just think, oh, I'll melt the snow and I'll be fine. There's a whole lot more involved in that, and we really have to think it through.
And also emergency sanitation. I wasn't aware of any sewer problems that they had in Texas.
Actually they were.
Okay.
Because what it was a lot of places lost their water. And when the power went out, some people lost their sewer too.
Okay.
And so they talked about things like, you know, they talked about, some of them, the wording wasn't really nice. How do I say this nicely? How very cold it was to try and use a bucket. And not having enough water. So some of them didn't have water, so they could have flushed their toilets, but there was no water to flush with. And so there was all kinds of different issues going on. If you go to our website, we have, and you guys, most of you are probably way beyond this, but we have a little newbie prepper series. And we have one on sanitation that just takes the basics that you need for sanitation and kind of walks you through it, kind of a newbie thing.
Absolutely. And how about power outage cooking? Just because the power goes out doesn't mean my belly stops grumbling. You can see here, Kenny's eating a...
Actually, that's Christy.
Oh, Christy. Sorry.
They are identical twins. So.
Christy's eating a cinnamon roll that I decided I'm going to stoke up our wood stove and we'll make these cinnamon rolls. I stoked it up a little too much and it burnt the top. The bottoms were really good. So if she turned that over, the bottom was really good to eat. So we sliced off the top, but this is the time to learn how to use the tools, right? Right now, while we can still run to Wendy's or wherever to get a replacement meal, right now is the time to learn how to use all these tools and to get it figured out.
And so we told you we did this grid down cooking challenge, and this was one of the cinnamon rolls during that challenge. But if you go to YouTube, there is a whole video series that goes week by week. And then at the end, Jonathan also calculates how much fuel we used of each kind of different fuel. And we talk about the things that we thought we liked, because we cook randomly a lot with alternative cooking methods. But 30 days is a serious commitment when you have life still going on. And so this was really interesting. So if you want to see kind of what happened, just check that out.
And another way that we have used alcohol to cook our food is this little sterno stove. And we put the little alcohol burner in there. It fits the sterno, it fits the safe heat, and it's not going to cook nearly as fast as your stove or as butane or as propane, but it does the job. It gets it done. And there's some great utility in being able to use something like this just to warm up soup.
Yeah, and we did an experiment. So alcohol is great for cooking indoors because it doesn't produce carbon monoxide as long as there's enough oxygen for it to burn. And we did this experiment where we compared 4 different kinds of cooking fuel, the denatured alcohol, Everclear, isopropyl alcohol, and then the safe heat. And that was really interesting. So there's a video on that, best alcohol fuel. And it was really interesting. Know what you're storing before you store it.
Yeah. And this is just an example of turning a proposed crisis into just a fun time. So this was fun, dude. We called the kids in and said, okay, we're going to pretend that we are cooking in an emergency. And here's stuff that you can dip in the fondue. And of course, Mama always makes it fun.
Yeah, the safe heat, and that's part of it. We wanted to experiment with the safe heat, and it did a really good job of melting and creating the fondue. You know, it's really hard to create a rolling boil with this. You're just not going to make it with one can, even when the pot's covered. But as far as warming things up, it does a great job.
I used a tea kettle with it and it works.
Does it work with a tea kettle?
Yeah, well, it'll get it warm enough to rehydrate meals or, you know, do basic things. Oftentimes you don't need a boil in order to get accomplish your mission.
Exactly, right. Because I've seen it where it's got the little teeny bubbles, right? And it's nice and hot.
Right.
But I've had issues getting it rolling boil, and that's fine. Just like you said, we really don't need that much. Hi, Peter.
Hi, it's nice to meet you.
It's nice to see you.
Yeah.
Okay, the butane stove was not my favorite before our experiment. And not every butane stove should be used indoors. In fact, most of them shouldn't. If you have a camping stove, it's not rated for indoor use. This is one that's used by caterers. It is designed for indoor use, not for outdoor use. They're more expensive. But what I found during our experiment was everything was so slow. Because I still had a hungry family all the time and life was still crazy. And the butane stove, man, that's a really nice hot flame really quickly.
Yep, you turn that on and it is hot fast.
Yeah, and so we have a whole video on that too, power out cooking with butane stove.
And this propane is another great fuel. Here you can see we're using a Camp Chef oven with the stovetop. That worked out really well. We really like that. There's also the stoves. Some of these are rated for indoor use. Some of them are not rated for indoor use. You need to make sure what you have and make sure that what you're using is safe to use indoors.
None of the ones that we are using on this screen are rated for indoor use. And then there's Ben cooking on my sweetheart oven. He got really good at it, right, during our little challenge. But there's also a video on safe indoor cooking. So I know we only have a couple minutes to go over this, but if you look at that video, you'll see a lot of good ideas about things that you can do inside your home so you don't have to go out in that blizzard.
And this, you can see that spigot on the end of the stove there.
Oh yeah, at the bottom.
See right down there at the bottom, that's the water jacket. And make sure that you have a supply of shelf-stable food in your home. We always recommend that people have at least a 3-month supply of everyday foods, things that you can go and grab and they're ready to go. They don't require a lot of preparation. Some of them you want to warm. Soup is better warm, but some of those you can just eat cold if you had to. But having that shelf-stable food is so important.
Yeah, and full disclosure, that's not my food storage. It's somebody else's, but yeah, that's a lot of good sugar there.
Ours looks a little bit similar, but without all the sugar.
All right, so it was really interesting when I explored this a little bit with some of our viewers because I want to learn this information, right? And so Eva was actually really good at getting back to me and telling me what was going on. Walmart was able to deal with credit cards just fine. And I'd say no, there was a line that stretched across the store from people waiting to check out. The pumps at the gas station were struggling to read credit cards though. I thought that was interesting. I'm trying to remember what some of these other ones were about. Oh, this last one, Selena, after going through hell freezing over down here in the Texas last week, I wish I would have considered these before then. The whole phrase, that will never happen to me, or that can't happen here, think again. The North needs to prepare for heat stroke conditions, and the South needs to prepare for hypothermia weather conditions like yesterday. I am a prepper, but I wasn't prepared for last week at all. My family was one of the fortunate of Texas because we had 4x4 with AT tires. We were at least able to have access to the stores and get what we needed before the shelves were empty and help neighbors out that couldn't. Now, the hard part is finding these things out right now. during the middle of the crisis, right? That is the hard part.
Yeah.
But I was so pleased that she was helping out her neighbors, right? Because I think that's really important. We all really, really need to take care of each other.
And that's so important to us. We strongly emphasize the power of community. We can't stand alone as easily as we can stand with all our neighbors and friends. We make it a point to build relationships wherever we can, because those relationships will bless everybody down the road when we need to all pull together. Community is such a great thing.
Yeah. And that middle comment, everything was sold out within hours. And we see that a lot when something happens. And we can, if we are prepared in advance, if we have the things stocked that we need, we don't have to go fight the crowds. We can just take care of our last minute preps at home.
And how about emergency communications? Making sure that you have the ability to communicate, both two-way communication and just receiving news and other important information.
Yeah, one of the things that they had talked about was different ways to charge your cell phone. This Christy had said, make sure you have a cell phone charger that you can use in your car, because a lot of people, what they were doing was they would go out to their car and they would turn it on so that they could get warm for a little while and charge their cell phone at the same time and things like that. They were having to get really creative because it was so cold.
And as part of that, they had some carbon monoxide problems with people not really thinking this through and creating dangerous situations. And that is such a tragedy, to have some kind of a tragic situation going on and then to make that worse by doing things that just aren't smart or endanger lives.
Oh, Johnny's favorite.
So I'm a huge fan of solar energy. I'm a huge fan of power banks. I think most people would be blessed by having some kind of a little power bank, enough to run some lights, charge phones. In this case, you can see we're charging a laptop. We're using a little thermoelectric cooler, charging the phone. These little power stations there's a lot of them out there on the market now. Make sure that you get a good one. But a lot of these can run things like a CPAP machine or medical equipment. And we highly recommend these for people who have those needs, because they can do a great job. You charge them while you have household power, and then you charge them with solar panels when you've lost that power. So such a great tool if you can get one of those. And of course, then if you have a solar power system, some people do. Obviously, I don't have to beat that drum too much, but it's such a great thing. It just works quietly. I get a lot of questions about, well, should I get solar or a generator? Most generators make a fair amount of noise and you're going to draw attention to yourself. The solar just sits there and quietly does its job. And I'm a huge fan of solar. I think it's a great way to go.
But make sure, if you're planning on running your oxygen or your CPAP machine on this, you need to experiment with it long before the crisis happens. Make sure that it really will work.
Yep. And of course, this is, generators are good. I'm not going to denigrate them too much. I think having a generator is a good thing. You do have to have the fuel, and you need to make sure that you use that outside. A few years back, there was a couple in Salt Lake, an older couple that needed oxygen. They put the generator in the garage. And of course, you had to run the cord through the door. That was enough of a gap to asphyxiate both of them, and they both died. And so you just have to be so careful.
You do.
Jonathan, it looks like David has a question.
Oh, David.
I was just going to point out the thing about, you mentioned fuel. Don't forget the oil.
Yeah, right.
And
right.
And you mentioned the noise. In some disaster areas, the thieves will take and steal a lawnmower, and in the middle of the night, wheel it back by your generator, get the lawnmower going, turn off the generator. There's noise that would wake you up, and off goes your generator. Don't forget the big heavy chain or cable.
Yeah,
exactly right.
Really careful. Yeah. So
if
one
I
of
may,
the things that, yes.
David, my daughter Hannah, right
Hi,
here,
Hannah.
she said, he's a ham operator. And I said, did you see his call sign? And she said, yes. So she recognized you right away. 73s to you. KX4LB here.
You're raising her right, Peter. You're raising her right.
Thank you. Say thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Hannah. Okay, so one of the things that Evil said, his town is officially out of gas, but they say most of this snow and ice should be melted by Sunday. Walmart is almost completely empty again. So just recognize that even though things are looking like they might get better, it took quite a while for things to recover and a long time for some of these people for their power to come back on. I think a generator is good because it'll work when the sun won't, right? I think there's a place for all of it. You just have to really carefully consider what is best for you and your family. There are two videos that we did on fuel. One was the shelf life of fuel and the other was how to store fuels for emergency. And both of those videos are something that would be worth your time to check out.
Yeah.
Oh, and these are the hybrid lights that we have back here in the window. This Fasting D said buy USB powered things so you can charge with a solar bank. And seriously, it is fantastic the way that these lights that are just hanging out in my window can charge our phones, right? And provide some of that little electricity that we need during hard times. And it just goes on forever. Like some of these lights are how many, 8, 10 years old?
Yeah. Yeah.
We have some that are really old and they're still working and they've held up to the abuse of the grandkids. So I just think it's a really good idea. Solar is definitely better than having candles out.
Yeah, and in our self-imposed grid down, get cold situation, we were going to candles. And then we realized that some wives and some kids just love to stick things in fires, and it turned out not to be a good thing. So we put the candles away and
the kids were lighting everything on fire. I had to watch them really closely because it's fascinating.
And I had to watch her, so it, you know.
All right. Oh, okay. So if you are interested in hybrid light, which is actually our favorite brand of solar light, there's a 20% off if you just use the promo code Provident. So that's really cool that they do that for our viewers. Okay. All right, we're done with all of the preps that you need to think about. Now.
So lesson number 4, have a list of last minute things to do, because sometimes when your brain gets going too fast and you're in the middle of crisis, we don't think as clearly as we might like to think we would. Just having a list that you can walk down through and make sure you've covered the important things is so important. Things like gathering water or
Unapologetic Vegan had a good list here. She said, if you know a storm's coming, spend some time cleaning, right? Because your vacuum cleaner is not going to work and your steam cleaner is not going to work. Doing laundry, get all caught up, your dishes, and kick up the heat a few degrees before it all happens. I thought those were some really good things to add to your list.
Yep.
Okay, so lesson number 5, the duration of the crisis and the aftermath. We don't know how long it's going to last, right? We don't know what the real aftermath of all of this is going to be. I just talked to one of our viewers just a few days ago, and she was talking about how she had lost so many of her trees, or her orange trees and lemon trees and her berry bushes, and everything was just gone. It had died. And so now she's got to not only be able to find new plants to replace those with, but wait for many years before they start producing again. And Texas produced a lot of food. And so, you didn't have to be anywhere near that polar vortex for the aftermath of this to affect you. So some of the supplies that were really in high demand and that were in shortage was like, it was a 90-degree elbow for a PVC pipe, right? Because so many pipes had broken. And so they couldn't even fix them because they were missing certain pipes that they just couldn't get, or parts that they couldn't get anywhere.
So the just-in-time economy that we live in, it lets us down in so many situations. And that's why it's important that we have our supplies, things that we need, so that when those things aren't available, we've already got it covered.
Yeah. Oh, we kind of jumped this. So we talked about the crop failure and the supply shortages. So many people in my town were racing to get gas ATM. They're saying it will be 3 to 4 more weeks before the power comes back on fully. That's kind of crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Broken pipes. This is my basement right at the beginning of COVID. Like, we had a pipe break. It was so frustrating and it ruined all the flooring down there. And there's just so much aftermath that you really have to plan for, and know that other people are also going through this. And so they need the same stuff that you need, and it drives prices up. Texas experienced a lot of grid damage because they had not hardened their grid to withstand these freezing temperatures. And it takes a long time to get those parts back in. I worked for a power plant, and I can tell you that it doesn't take much to have critical parts go down and you can't replace them. And we think, those huge transformers that are built in China and things, those are a really big deal, right? The power plant I worked at had a spare one that was all there ready to hook up and go, but we could have just a little tiny part go out and the entire plant wouldn't work. And so, it's a lot more sensitive than we might imagine. And then road repairs, there was a lot of damage to roads and the infrastructure. And then we've got the economic losses, time away from work, right? So many people couldn't go to work. And so businesses lost things, and there's just a lot of issues.
So lesson number 6, build self-reliance. And I think that's what all this is really about, is building the ability to help ourselves in a crisis and to be able to help others. Again, we talk about community and how we can help each other.
Carla in here talks about how necessity is truly the mother of invention, and she will survive this. The couple that talked to us and sent us these photos, they had a gas log fireplace, but it won't run without electricity. And so her husband just got really smart and figured out a way to hook up some D batteries so that the fireplace would operate, because they had natural gas, but they didn't have the
ability to get it going.
Yeah. And then not only did they do this for them, but he figured out how to do it. And then he did it for a neighbor down the street too, to make sure that somebody else was warm. And I think we really need to think about that as preppers, that, sometimes we've been blessed with this great knowledge and the ability to figure things out. And during hard times, we really need to share that.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we need to increase supplies and stock supplies. That was the other thing about being self-reliant, right? For me, I don't get rid of blankets now. After our cold experiment, I was so cold and we did not have enough blankets, and we used them from everything from covering the windows for insulation to hanging in doorways. They were just used for so many different things. But Adri Raindrop said, needless to say, I'm going to start gathering equipment to be better prepared for next time. And that's what we need to do. We need to learn from the experience and then move forward and make sure that the next time we are better prepared. And that's what we do. That's why we make ourselves miserable sometimes, because we've got to learn.
That's
right?
how we learn.
And I'd rather learn in a controlled environment than in one where I don't have any options. I can't call good and say, I'm done. I've learned.
Yeah. And we've talked a little bit about this already. Lesson number 7 is take care of each other. Make sure we're checking on maybe some elderly people, some widows, or whoever that lives close to us, or friends of ours. Make sure that we're checking in on them. Make sure they have what they need. Sometimes that means everybody gathers at one home and you're heating one space and helping everyone to stay warm. Whatever it is, make sure that we take care of each other.
Ruby Carter said, I'm in Texas and we went without heat for the past 7 days. We don't have a fireplace and our entire area was out of propane, kerosene, and diesel by day 2. We even had to help families break up furniture, box springs, and wood fences to get wood for them to get some heat. With no salt trucks or plows here and the roads were so bad, even first responders couldn't get to help people or couldn't get to people to help them. Day 3, no gas, food, or water, and water pipes bursting all over the place. I was stocked up with food, water, and dried milk, which I'm still helping people as of today because food and wood is coming in slowly. Very interesting to hear what happens, right? I loved Brian and his wife. Currently not a prepared person, but you guys are helping me change this. Thank you. Currently in Texas during this freeze, that didn't happen very often. We have not lost power or water yet, but if I do, I have some of these items that you have showed us, not because I prepared, but I just got lucky. My wife and I have been hosting family and friends that are not as fortunate as we have been. Kind of like what John said, we just have to pull together. I know that so often as preppers, we think about how do we protect what we have from other people. And yet I think in most situations, we need to think about how can we bless the lives of others because we've been wise and we've prepared and my house is warm. Yeah, I would like it to be nice and quiet here, right? But maybe it's just better for me to invite some people that are less fortunate, some of our friends and neighbors or other family members over and share the wealth.
And lesson number 8, eventually the weather clears and power returns. We always like to take the optimistic view of things. Yeah, things can be tough at times, but we get past it. And hopefully because we have prepared, we get past it better than we would otherwise. But you know, it's good to remember in the midst of the crisis, it's going to get better. Things will work themselves out and things will come to a better place.
Beth Dawson said, 1 week out from the Texas winter storm with 75 degrees now, but still a bit shell-shocked. We are hoping to buy a generator which can be used in hurricane season too. We made terracotta pot heater and it helped so much. 18 hours without heat and our house got down to 53 with an outside temp of 13 degrees. We taped around doors, cooked outside on a fire pit, wore hats, slept in one room, but we did not think about the tent. Most news stations just gave instructions to wrap pipes, and normally we hit 32 degrees for about an hour all winter, so not many survival or prep skills are taught. This made a definite impression on the state. And the impression that it made on us is that we just need to help each other get prepared, right? I think there's a lot more people now who are motivated, who are saying, oh, preppers aren't so strange after all. You know, it's a really good thing.
Hopefully between this experience and what's been happening with COVID over the last year, people are realizing that it's not the government's job to take care of them, that they're better off to take some steps and have that peace of mind.
Yeah. So learn the valuable lessons and prepare for the future. Tell us what you guys, well, let's finish this and then think about things that you've learned from watching this, right? From watching everything that's been going on in the news, and what are you doing differently and how are you upping your game? So it's funny because I've got this newbie prepper thing here and I'm thinking none of you guys are newbie preppers. I'm not sure that any of you actually need newbie prepper stuff at all, but
maybe you know some people that need it.
If you know somebody who's trying to start out, this series that we've come up with is just a really good way to baby steps, right? It takes them slowly through the process so that they can reach a different point.
Yep.
So tell us, can you tell us what you're doing to up your game or doing differently because of what happened in Texas, the polar vortex, what's happened with COVID? All right, what are you doing differently?
Kylene, this is John Hoyle.
Hi, John.
When you talk about using the LED lights and so forth, I have them also, but because there's a possibility that an electromagnetic pulse or a solar storm could destroy the LEDs, I would urge people in the off time to keep them packed in an EMP solar storm Faraday cage to protect them. You can also follow Crescent Carney's method of wrapping your portable radio or your LED lights in a bubble wrap and then cover it over that with heavy duty aluminum foil. So that's something to consider. And of course, one of my biggest concerns is we talk about this grid down for 7 to 10 days, but EMP or a solar storm could take the grid out and could be out for months or even years, particularly if it destroys the very high voltage transformers, which we do not build in this country anymore, to my knowledge. We have to buy them from China or India. And so those are a couple other considerations for power outages.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. That is a very, very serious threat. And, you know, whether it's a solar storm or a man-caused EMP or a cyber attack, whatever brings the grid down, that's what we ask our people, our followers, to prepare for, because that is an absolute worst case. And you're right, it could be months, it could be years before that could be restored. So take his message about the Faraday cages and these threats to our grid.
And don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? So for us, like these lights that we have here are fantastic for the majority of issues that we have, especially for a quick power outage. But that doesn't mean that we don't have all kinds of other backups. And we have lots of good candles. I mean, actually cases of them, but that would not be my first go-to. So really, very good point. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? Make sure you diversify things and have a backup for your backup for your backup.
There we go.
Thank you.
What else? What other great advice?
I think Relief is raising his hand. Can you unmute Relief?
He has to unmute himself.
Oh.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Hi.
Hi. How big a solar panel do you need to charge? Like one of those batteries, that battery pack thing?
Like the little portable power stations?
Yeah, that's it.
Like the one that you had.
Typically you get those and it's kind of frustrating because they don't come, you buy them separately, but you definitely want to get the solar panels, and they're usually like a 60 watt, 100 watt, 120 watt. And you have to look at your portable power station and see how much input you can, input into it. They do have limits on how much you can, solar you can charge it with. But I encourage people to get the maximum that it will take so that they can recharge quickly. You know, so you're not always going to have that sun, but typically they are kind of in the 60 to 120 watt panels. And sometimes you can add, like that humless station that we have, we can input 400 watts into that. So I always make sure I have enough solar to charge that as fast as I can. And each of those portable power stations is different. They're all going to have different capacities as far as what they can put out and how fast you can charge them. But yeah, I would make sure if you have one of those, get enough solar so that you can max out the charging rate.
Okay, and the second question, how sunny does it have to be to charge?
It depends a little bit on the chemistry of your solar panels. The old amorphous panels actually do better in cloudy conditions sometimes than the newer technology, but the newer technology in full sun will charge, you know, that's I guess the ultimate. It really does a great job. You know, you're going to charge some, even on a cloudy day, you're going to still have some charging going on. Obviously full sun is the best, But even if you've got clouds, you're still going to have some charging.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a
Okay.
question, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter.
We were, I saw somewhere that there was a report that, and maybe you've covered this already. I was a little late getting into the meeting. That the grid down was only a few minutes away from being like a months long grid down scenario. Have you guys heard anything about that or know anything about the circumstances behind how that could have been?
I am not aware of it, but it doesn't surprise me that they probably came real close to having a larger cascading failure. But
If I
I'm
find
not
that
familiar
story, I'll
with
send
any
it to you.
details. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, I'd
do.
be interested, because that is a good message. Is sometimes we catch things just before it really gets bad, and that's great, but that potential is always there for that cascading failure to just take everything down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What else? Other good advice, counsel, things that you've learned?
Come on, you guys. There's
Questions?
a wealth of information out here.
My husband spent the day getting his bug out bag ready.
Good.
Today he bought us some new sleeping bags and a tent that he can actually haul in his backpack, and all kinds of little gadgets. So the kids are excited for whatever's going to come. They're actually hoping so that we can head to the hills and chop down trees to burn wood and use a bow and arrow to eat our dinner.
There we go.
Catch some squirrel or something.
Well, for the future generation of preppers that you saw in my lap earlier, tomorrow we're planning a hike out in the woods. There's a local state park, and I've been working on bug out bags as well, or bug out equipment. Ordering a Sportsman's Guide is really good. They have a lot of used Alice gear. That's what I grew up playing with as a kid. So
Sure, yeah.
that's I've been buying the same of that exact stuff so that it's everybody's uniform. But we're all going to go out tomorrow probably and with another family friend, or another family that's a friend of our families, and we're going to have a group hike. I'm an Army veteran. He's still serving, so it should be a lot of fun. So we're going to get the kids out there, the dog, and get everybody out there hiking again.
Absolutely.
I'll show them.
What a wonderful thing. Make it fun. Make it enjoyable.
I show them how to find game trails. Like this is where an animal's passed. Look how to look for landmarks. To remember when they're walking down the trail. We take the simple trails. We don't take them. I haven't taken them. They're young. I don't take them anywhere crazy. So, but I'm still teaching. Okay, you remember this right here? Remember this hollow log? Things like that. So, little things that I can build on. So I'm working with building the future of preppers, whether they know it or not.
Good for you.
That's good job.
That's great. All right, we have any more questions?
Roseanne?
Yes.
Kylene had asked about things that we've learned, and I've learned a few little ones. One is the value of hydrogen peroxide, because if you go to the dentist now, you notice they'll give you a little bit to get rid of the viruses. And the wonder of hydrogen peroxide is it kills germs, bacteria, and viruses. Mm-hmm. And so if you gargle with it a few times a day, it really has a very deep health benefit for members of your family. And the other thing is, of course, the fat in soap melts the anneals on the coronavirus or any virus. And goat milk soap has the highest fat content of any soap. And so I encourage people to use goat milk soap as a way of moisturizing the skin, but also melting any kind of virus that might be on them or on their hands or whatever. And the third thing is with the solar lights that are outside, and they're not expensive. You can buy them for a couple bucks. They have generally a 10 to 14 hour use. And so they light your garden, but in the event of a power failure, you can bring them into your kitchen and your bathroom. And at least that way you have lights in there.
Right.
And also, of course, I'm always, as you know, a fan of water bricks. So if people have water bricks with the spigot, they can bring them in again to the kitchen and the bathroom, and the children can brush their teeth, and you can do your dishes and all those kinds of things. And it's just a very simple way to have clean water when the power's out, or you're going through an event.
Yeah, water
Hey,
bricks are
Bruce,
awesome. We have those
I
in the
have a-
cactus store.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Bruce. So
Sure.
recently something came across my desk talking about how lysine is really good to take for those who have COVID. And normally we take lysine for like cold sores, right? The herpes virus. Have you heard anything about that?
No.
Okay.
No, I
really
can't say I have, but the thing is with there's so much misinformation out there right now about COVID.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that it's a virus like any virus. That's my opinion. And so the hydrogen peroxide is such a simple solution. The way I found out about it is I worked on an anthrax project 18 years ago, and the British were charging us $300 for the secret formula. And all it was, when I went through the ingredients, was hydrogen peroxide. So we could have gone to CVS and gotten it for $1 a bottle because it was a government contract. The British were charging us $300 a bottle to clean up the Brentwood facility. And the wonder of hydrogen peroxide is it's an antiseptic and a disinfectant. And so when I've done supply chain testing in this area, the Lysol is still in short supply and the Clorox is in short supply, but that's not necessary. I mean, if you use hydrogen peroxide or if you use white vinegar, you're much better off, especially if you have children, because it's not a heavy chemical.
Yeah.
So
good point.
it's just a simple solution that for whatever reason is not being touted. And I think it's just because it's so inexpensive. So if you go to the stores, most supplies right now are very good. And I've been encouraging people on my blog to now go out and buy supplies because everything's abundant again. I mean, all the shelves that were empty, if you go to the stores now, they're just bursting with toilet paper and baby formula and baby diapers and all those things that were in short supply back in March. And when I was doing an analysis of it, the thing that I found is you stay away from the big box stores because the hoarders love big box stores. And so they wipe out all the supplies in the big box stores. And then you have the second level, which is grocery stores, and they tend to get hit hard. And then you have the convenience stores, and below them are the dollar stores and what I call the tertiaries, which in my area, we have McCutcheon's, Apple products, and everything you need to live is in that retail store. And then we have Hans Pork and Beans, the same thing there. All the things that you need are in that store. And so you should know in advance, where these tertiary places are, where you can locate them. And it's surprising how few people know that they're out there because everybody's become so dependent on these big box stores.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
Mhm.
True.
So Bruce, do you know what the shelf life is on hydrogen peroxide?
No, I don't. I'd have to look it up.
Okay, because it seemed to me that like alcohol was forever, but hydrogen peroxide was shorter, but it only gradually diminishes. Anyway, when I use hydrogen peroxide as a insecticide for my indoor garden, because you can put it in water and it actually does a really good job. And I couldn't get it at all for a while, like at all, anywhere that I looked.
Did you go to dollar stores?
I did, because I thought, okay, they'll have it. I'm sure they'll have it. But
because I've been able to buy it in cases from the dollar stores.
Wow.
Yeah, you can get it now.
Yeah,
I can
$24
totally
for
get it
24
now.
bottles.
I just want to know how much I should stock up on it before it won't
Yeah,
work.
I'd have to research that one. I don't know.
Siri just told me that an unopened container of hydrogen peroxide is around 3 years
Okay.
shelf life.
Okay.
That's good to know. Very good to know.
Do you trust Siri?
Siri's so smart.
Sometimes.
I know sometimes I can trust it, and sometimes
Siri
I can't.
is smarter than Alexa. I found
Siri
out.
also
Siri knows
said,
everything about you.
Siri also said that when the hydrogen peroxide is open, it will expire within 6 months.
Yeah, that I
Okay,
did
Yeah,
know.
I believe that.
Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
that. That's,
Okay.
yeah.
But the wonder of it is it's so
And you folks
inexpensive.
have made me
Yeah.
really cold. I'm here in Florida and I was out on my sea-doo and it was 86 degrees here today.
We put a chill on things,
We
huh?
were in a snowstorm today and I couldn't get in my garden. It made me really sad.
Yeah.
But you be prepared. You may be
Kylene,
warm
you
now.
mentioned lysine. I also have not seen anything in the medical literature. I follow this COVID medical theories and remedies and so forth very closely on a number of listservs, and with the physician professor's son, we talk about it a lot. But there are two things one can do. Get your vitamin D level checked. They
Okay.
have
Right.
found that people whose vitamin D levels are low are much more susceptible to dying or extreme complications from COVID, and likewise zinc.
Zinc.
So you can get blood tests for those. And if you take vitamin D, it also helps to take a little magnesium with it to help the body absorb it. Otherwise, you need a lot more vitamin D.
Right.
And zinc also helps in the case of COVID as a preventive, and it should be taken with some iodophore, such as a common product that begins with a C that's in onions and so forth. You can buy it at the health food store. Can't think of it right now, because it helps the body to absorb it. And those are some prevention measures you can do. And a lot of times in hospitals today with COVID patients, when they find out they got low vitamin D, they start pumping 50,000 units into them every day. But it takes days for it to build back up to a healthy level. So it's better to keep the healthy level all the time than to try to build it up after you get sick.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank
and to piggyback on that, one of the things that they did that was so awful was they shut down the children's playgrounds around us. And of course, what children need is vitamin D, sunshine, exercise, and to play. And instead, they put police tape and caution tape around I don't know if they did it where you are, but they did it where I am. And I was furious because it was so critical for the children to be out in the sunshine, staying healthy. And instead, they did the opposite. They had them inside. And worse, the schooling situation where instead of learning, so many of these kids they're just playing games all day, to the point where the data centers have doubled in size in the past year to handle all the gaming. So to me, that's the proof that, it's almost a lost generation. Instead of learning, they're sitting inside playing games all day, which is the worst thing they could be doing.
Well, my wife's a school teacher, high school Spanish teacher. We have gotten our kids back to school. She just went back to school, but she was having to teach from home and also do, she's working on her master's in special education. So, but she had trouble with kids who were supposed to be, paying attention in class, and they're gaming all through class.
Right.
So there are things lost, and we aren't building herd immunity by separating like that either.
Yeah.
Right.
Bruce, Dave Gerber, where are you located?
I'm in Maryland.
Okay. I'm out here in Utah. We don't have caution tape on the playgrounds.
Yeah.
Well,
I do have it.
fondest
I do
memory of
have it on the
Utah was when
staircase
I was at
going
the
up to my
TACDA
building
meeting,
at work.
and
though.
everybody had a gun at the table except for me.
Ah.
All right. Does anyone else have anything they want to share? Thank you so much for
Hey.
all of the expertise in the room. I think we've all learned a lot from each other and from Kylene and Jonathan. Thank you so much. It's been a great
Thanks for
meeting.
being part of the solution, everyone.
Yeah.
That's our motto. You're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. All of you here are part of the solution, and thank you.
This is David with one observation. Before the world ended last year, we'd get together down in Salt Lake City. It's just nice to see that the geographic range of the meeting has increased all the way to the East Coast and the South. And it's just nice to meet everybody from all over the place now.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, this is great. I think it's a great format. So thanks to the pandemic for bringing Zoom into our lives so that we can all meet and chat together and learn from one another. So
Who would have ever thought that we would have Zoom? 60 years ago when we founded TACDA, these things weren't even in existence.
Right.
So it's great to be able to communicate all over the country.
Yeah, I've been a CDVU member since I was in college 20 years ago, and I live in Alabama, and I've obviously never been to a meeting. So this is the first time I've ever actually got to attend one. I just took the clip notes from Jonathan Kylene, or Paul Seifried or one of the others, to give me the updates on what was gone over. But anyhow, like you said, I mean, Zoom has been awesome in that regard. That I get to link up with people I've been sorry, kiddos, but I get to link up with people face to face that I've been talking to with just a written word. So it's been nice in that regard as well. So it's been a real pleasure to actually join you guys for once.
Good.
That's great.
It's nice to have you.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, it's great to have some of the first timers here. Frank Williams is a first timer. Frank, who just spoke, is actually one of the founders of TACDA, which is very cool. TACDA is going to be 60 years old next year.
Yeah.
I think I'm probably the only one that's still alive.
Of the founders, you are.
The founders.
And John Hoyle is here with us also. And John Hoyle is also a longtime member, just a little bit younger than Frank in TACDA years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm 77, and I know I've been part of TACDA since about 72 or 74. And I remember Mr. Williams and his important role that he played in stimulating the whole thing, but now we're both gray heads.
I'm a little older.
It's a good
than
club. It's a good club to belong to.
Yes,
Lots
Jane
of gray here.
Orient. Jane Orient is here also, and she's also a longtime member.
She's a great. I mean, we owe a lot to her.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It was a great presentation. And I did put on the chat, I should call your attention to the AAPS guide for COVID prevention and early treatment at aapsonline.org.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Great resource.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for joining. And we'll see you again next month. We meet every second Saturday at 6 o'clock, and I'll send you another link. So tell your friends. We hope to see you there.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Jonathan, Kylene.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
are so welcome. Good night.
All right.
Good night. Thanks for hosting.